Welcome to Executives at the Edge, a podcast brought to you by MEF. I'm your host, Pascal Menezes. Join me as we explore thought-provoking perspectives from the leaders and changemakers who are propelling enterprise digital transformation forward. Well, I'm so delighted to have Michael Kearns, co-founder and chief strategy officer for Martis. Michael, welcome to Executives at the Edge. And if you can please tell our audience a little bit about yourself and really what Martis does, that'd be really appreciated.
Thank you, Pascal. Thanks for affording me the opportunity. I guess firstly about myself, I'm about 25 years plus working in network management, OSS and BSS in technical product and business leadership roles. Prior to founding Martis back in 2003, which were 20 years this year actually. So
congratulations.
It's a long time. I headed up a product strategy group actually in 4 Systems, Marconi. Around their data network management. So I came from a big company, started a small company and grew it from there. And I was CEO of Martis from 2003 to 2015. Now I'm working as the Chief Strategy Officer, looking at new product and service innovation within the company. So trying to grow the company around new products and services. And over the past 4 years, I've been deeply involved with the MEF, as you know, focused on, we built a product which would enable providers, it's called Embrace, which will enable providers to implement quickly the MEF LSO processes and APIs across their BSS stack. I work within the MEF community very closely for the standards development, for the implementation side, and then the adoption with the MEF leadership team. So that's really myself. Martis, in the broader sense, is really our main areas of focus. We're experts in network and cloud automation software. We work on 2 fronts, which the inter-provider piece is the newer area for me that I've been developing myself. And then we have OSS BSS transformation, where we work with service providers around the globe to support them. A lot around standards and best practices and open technologies to try to introduce that agility into their operations around the network, basically.
So did Martis start with automation in mind to begin with, day one?
Yeah, that's pretty much our origin. So when I left Marconi, 2003, was sort of telecoms was a little bit depressed at that stage, right?
Yeah,
so
the bust, 2001.
So we pretty much took a chance to set something up, had an opportunity, and we started doing consulting services, working with vendors actually in a lot of cases. So equipment vendors like Cisco, Ericsson and other vendors. And we actually helped to build management stacks for the vendors. So we've always been very focused around networks, from the resource right up to the service abstraction and around the whole operational side around that, what we would traditionally have called FCAPS type capabilities. Yeah, so very familiar with that. Worked in TMF and MEF on both sides. MEF obviously we had the Layer 2 Ethernet services, which were very popular and growing at that stage. I come from an ATM background, so that was kind of the next evolution. Actually, I went through the IP/MPLS and the Carrier Ethernet, sort of the combination. I went there and started all the modeling. So we worked actually across MEF and TMF and did a lot of work there on developing standard APIs, standard components within the OSS that we would bring to market with our vendors, basically vendor partners or customers, Ford acquired an Irish company, which was a small network management company. And they had the network management platform that became the ATM network management platform, which expanded into IP/MPLS and other areas. And I headed up that whole group. But then Marconi bought the whole of the 4 Systems, but pretty much in space of 6 months. So one acquisition from a small company to a bigger, to 4, and then acquired by Marconi. It was quite interesting. Yeah.
So are your customers mainly service providers, or you also do enterprises too?
More and more of our customers are actually, a lot of our customers are service providers, but we're getting more customers now in the enterprise space. But what's happening there is it's kind of driven through our engagements, because we work with some vendors on the orchestration space for our OSS BSS transformation business. And they can be engagements at a service provider or an enterprise. So for example, we can be working with some big banks who are big enough to do their own sort of cloud orchestration, and we do both cloud and network, so in combinations. So we can often get involved in doing orchestration on that side. With the inter-provider automation today, it's mostly around supporting the service providers and doing the API development and implementation using our Embrace stack.
Got it. So you really are a system integrator, because I know you're a very powerful technical house. You start you said automation systems, but you really have tremendous system integration capabilities, and that's what we kind of do with a lot of your customers. And now you've built a product specifically, and maybe you can tell us a little about what this product does. It seems, I know in MEF we're using it as a onboard interop test platform, which is an emulator for buying and selling. But it's also used for many other areas. So maybe you can help our listeners understand what Embrace does.
Yeah, actually, so the test platform kind of grew out of the fact that we had an implementation of the MEF LSO processes and APIs fully sort of baked, ready to go. So we could emulate the roles, the buyer-seller roles, and then we said, we could use that within MEF, which there was a requirement emerging to have some sort of sandbox or development tool that you could use for developers, or you could test and load your partners' configs and stuff. So, but our primary objective in creating the Embrace product, an inter-provider automation product, was to give pre-built processes and APIs to a provider that they could quickly adapt into their BSS OSS environment. So they have a whole lot of BSS applications already. How do you harmonize those BSS applications and provide outbound processes that are MEF compliant? So we provide the software as an accelerator, which can get you there in a number of weeks. And then what happens is we do an integration project. We do an assessment of your BSS landscape and OSS landscape. And we say, okay, what capabilities do you have in the BSS? And in some cases, they might not have the capability, in which case we provide the capability.
But you're not a BSS vendor, though.
I would not say we're a BSS vendor, but for the purpose of the MEF processes and APIs, we can provide different means to allow them to actually take the order, like in our UI. Say, for example, if they don't have an ordering platform, or they're not ready to integrate it with their back office order system. We can do everything. Like we can do the address validation, the POQ quote. We can integrate that with their back office systems, and then when they want to do the ordering, we can actually present it in our Embrace UI effectively.
Got it.
And the customer can go in and actually process that order, and do all the engagement with the outbound partner based on using UIs or using scripting. So we can kind of do the BSS functionality that's needed. Maybe it's a stopgap, maybe it's not, because sometimes the order volumes are small. They don't justify the spend on the integration, which can be costly. But in some cases, it's just saying, okay, we're waiting for our order API, or we're in BSS transformation for ordering, so we'll do that.
Now, just for our listeners, the processes involved, I don't think people understand, is the commercial idea is you want to be able to check an address for what kind of capabilities and services are, right? And then after that, you want to be able to get a price quote on a service that you want to be interested in, correct? And then from there, if you like it or a customer likes it, they put an order through, and that's all automated to gain. And then from the ordering process, then you have to update that inventory, because you want to make sure your inventory is all up to date on everything you're ordering, correct? And then from there, it goes now into operational aspects. Now, do you cover operational capabilities too, like service function testing and all the performance management, the fault management?
So actually, very interesting you should ask us that, because we've just, the operational APIs are the next thing to be developed within MEF, and actually
coming out in June.
Actually, quite a number of our team are developing the operational APIs for our other roles within MEF. But actually, we've just gone into production with the first operational API that I know of from MEF, which is around performance monitoring.
No basically. Way. In production within
a satellite company, with a satellite company.
Impressive.
The satellite business performance is everything. You've got expensive services. I need to know what was the historic, what's happening with my service. Am I getting the right level of performance? And so we've actually just implemented that with one of our satellite providers, and that's gone live as well for their first customer, which is actually as an enterprise customer. Interestingly,
that's very cool. So they want enterprises want to use an API to know how well their satellite service is performing.
Yeah, and in their environment, what they're doing is they're maybe getting services from different vendors or different suppliers, different satellite providers, and then they create some dashboard and some way of pulling that information out and showing. This satellite provider also has its own portal, but they want to go a bit deeper and be able to give me they pull in the data regularly, and then they just say, okay, I'm going to run an algorithm to see if the SLA was upheld or whatever problems might be there. This is the kind of concept they would have.
But how are you collecting that performance data? You would have to go down to the network, collect all that through telemetry information. Are you doing all that?
Well, they have a BSS and an OSS.
Okay.
And what happens in this case, they have a back office system which creates the data into a warehouse.
And then you put it
can present it onto a Kafka sort of engine, and it can be retrieved. But our main job there is to put the personality on the front end, which is based on the MEF
APIs
133 standard for performance monitoring.
Got it. Okay. So basically, you take the information and repackage it into an open standard API.
Yeah, it's more like, and in that case, that's clearly like we're trying to. Each of these back office platforms, they have different ways of describing the performance stats.
Yes,
They're non-standard. I mean, that's very common in this satellite world that they built their own NMSs, and those NMSs have their own ways of doing things. So first part was we worked with the provider to define a normalized model for all of those, so that it doesn't matter which vendor is supporting the terminal in the back office, or supporting the terminal in the network and their NMS. So it gets presented back to the customer as, here's your stats, and you could have 3 or 4 different terminal vendors in the back office actually supporting the service.
Interesting. Now, another big use case you have is there's a lot of proprietary APIs out, right? So providers have all kinds of proprietary APIs for quote ordering or, all this kind of stuff. You could also do an adapter to their proprietary API to standard, right?
Yes. Yeah.
That's
the most common use case that we would actually work on. So we go to a provider, our process is, okay, what have you got in the back office systems? What do you support in automation? What APIs do you have? Because our integration is really around APIs if we want to automate right through to the back office system to make it work,
Right.
And so we'd ask them about the what APIs they have, and we'd do an analysis to see, is this going to fit? Sometimes what they call quoting, they would actually do the address validation in line in the quote request. So you have to kind of work with what they've got, and then they might say, okay, we're going to do a change, and the whole idea then with the layer that we provide is this independent layer that provides a consistent interface to anybody who's interfacing with them, but they can evolve the back office system APIs. They can continue to use them as they use them in different ways. They might have portals using them, or they might have internal operations folks on the phone who are using it for orders, but they can always present the MEF API and processes outbound to anybody who wants to consume them. And I'm talking a lot about suppliers, the guys who are sellers, right? But we actually have a buying application too, which does the opposite. It can create the well-formed MEF API requests based on the MEF process and standard towards the sellers, basically. So we can cover both sides. And then we have a third piece, which is tying the two together. So for example, if a request comes into a supplier and that supplier says, I can do this on net, but I actually need to go to some off-net suppliers to do some aspects of that, we can automate the processes of going and querying.
Oh, that's very cool.
The off-net guy as well. That's very cool. And that's actually something we're working on with some providers too.
So I was wondering if there is a retail provider that has a whole partnership of wholesale providers around the planet for getting access to their loops. How does the retail provider now know to go query, let's say, 1,000 providers to see, of course, the geography, thousands covering the same geography. So you kind of help on that?
Well, obviously, the way it works today is you have to have these established relations. We're not just going out firing off things. So you have to have established relationships. So yeah, we can then automate the piece that says, okay, I have this incoming request. it says access E-line in Italy, and I can go to Italy and say, okay, let's go to Sparkle or Redolet and call to whoever's serving Italian area, and give me can you first? It's the same process, right? Do you understand this address?
Yeah.
What service can you give me at the address? What price can you give it to me for? How soon can you deliver it? And I want to order it now. So that whole thing can be negotiated in the back end for that.
Wow. So where do you see this market headed in terms of enterprise networking, network automation, and the role of standards? I mean, you keep saying MEP, also APIs. Now, one of the things I think we've done really well is we've tried to get the industry, and I keep saying this, to get to some standard level of how people talk to each other, network providers to provider, right? Because it's always been either manual or proprietary, and then if it's a proprietary, then one supports that, and you connect another guy, and then you get N-squared problems of APIs, and you have to keep up to date. It's the same code with APIs, but all in different formats, right? Or ordering, or all this. So what we've been trying to MEP is to try to get a common language, a common API for all of these quote ordering processes and so on, including the operationals, so that it's just developed once and deploy anywhere, right? Like Kubernetes and containers have done, right? So do you see that is, and you're seeing uptake of people was thinking that way?
Yeah, I think we're quite mature in terms of like we've reached the tipping point for the international wholesale market today.
Yeah.
Like there's enough of the big players in international wholesale now automated. Now we need to get more buyers into that market, but there's plenty of suppliers in there who are automated with the processes and APIs. But I think part of the problem sometimes for those guys is like when they, it's kind of who's going to move first, sort of another buyer goes in and says, okay, I got to change, the way I do things, and I've got to get a lot of people on board. It's not easy, to go and get people to adopt it. But I think we talk about this, is it a must-have, is it a nice-to-have? I think for the wholesale trading, domestic and international, I think it's a big improvement. Whether it's a must-have just for the purpose of what they use it today, I still have a question about that, I'll be honest. But I do think there's something very interesting in enterprise networking that's happening that makes it a must-have. And I'll explain that a little bit, right? Okay, because, and you know this because it's also something that you've shared in your vision, sort of that the ultimate end customer is the enterprise. The enterprise network has fundamentally shifted from where it used to be. Sort of centralized network produced within the walls of a single provider, IPVPN, firewalls, NATs, deployed inside of the single provider's environment. Yeah, they'd buy circuits, and, the last mile circuits and things, but it was really primarily controlled within the walls of a single provider. But if you look at the network where we have it today with SASE, SD-WAN, multi-cloud, satellite, interconnect provider, last mile providers, everything. Actually, that multi-vendor network that we used to have and talk about for many years is now a multi-provider network. Okay, so that kind of changes the whole dynamic, right? Because now I need to connect my very mobile customer base, global customer base, employees, partners, to the cloud and resources and applications that are also distributed around the globe. So they're not like some of those clouds, as we know, can be in the edge. They can be in different central public cloud data centers. And I need to connect them all. And there's no single service provider today who can make all of these connections. So the network has evolved to being multi-provider, and there's a lot more choices. You could use satellite access, you can use internet access, you can use private line access, you can use a multi-cloud core to go across the world. You can use interconnect providers for connecting between you and other providers who are providing you last mile services or transit services to other locations around the world. If you compare what we used to do in the traditional network management, it used to be all kind of within the OSS stack, and you would integrate with the vendor, EMS and NMS. But now you don't have that, because that circuit or that core network you're relying on is in another provider's network, or it's in another provider's co-located infrastructure that exists in a complete. So the only way you can manage them is if you have a full suite of processes and APIs to give the same management experience that the enterprise would need. How do you monitor? How do you? And additionally, I think in this world we have this idea that we're actually going to go out and have to negotiate with loads of these providers to see who has the service in the right location, what price they can give me. You know, all of these things have to be done. So we have the business negotiation, which is helped by the Sonata APIs in MEF. And then we have the problem of the OSS that we had with the traditional networks, which is how do I provide performance on my network? How do I bring that single dashboard for the enterprise? If it's a managed service provider who's offering, how do I bring that single dashboard? So I think this requires the new architecture, and that's where those processes and APIs we've been working on within MEF become like a must-have, because the enterprise still wants to know that you're able to manage and monitor the network and see what faults are there and be able to offer them the best prices and things like that. So it's truly this switch from this traditional multi-vendor networks we used to have, which were inside the walls of a provider, to a truly multi-provider network that's just served by a lot of different parties, basically.
That's interesting. Now, what you're saying is that this is probably more catered to the multinationals and large enterprises. That what they want to do is they don't want to outsource everything to just one provider who then in the back end has all their global partners, right? That's traditionally what many of the providers do, is say one-stop shop. Come to me, I'll handle all your networks worldwide, right? And that's the retail offering, right? And they try to bundle a bunch of stuff together, and even though they can't deliver it all by themselves because of all parts of the world, but they try to hide that through their partnerships, right? And automation. That's kind of how we started with the whole projects, right? But now you're saying these bigger, larger enterprises, even the multinationals for sure, are saying, you know what? No, I want to connect to all these providers myself in different geographies and basically be able to do the whole quoting, ordering, operational aspects.
I think the enterprise could do it themselves, or a managed service provider could do it on their behalf. But the problem with the managed service provider now is more complex than it used to be traditionally, because traditionally they'd have like a core provider who's offering the IP/MPLS network and you know, the core. And you really kind of were able to provide all the fault management, performance, But now that even that MSP or the integrator like IBM or whoever it is who's managing that network for the large corporate, or you know, he's basically having to work with a lot more pieces that no longer reside inside a single provider. It could be, as I mentioned, you know, an interconnect provider, a lot of last mile providers, a cloud core provider, a multi-cloud core. He now needs to actually handle all of that and deliver the same management that he had before, plus he needs to do all the negotiation piece. So what tools does he have at his disposal to do that efficiently? It's not very easy. If you tried to do that today, you have to go to your interconnect provider, use their portal. If you go to the multi-cloud guy, you have to use the multi-cloud vendor management, and then, or if you want to go with the public cloud provider, you do that. You want to get the edge cloud provider, you've got to go to that. So I think there's a big opportunity to connect what we're doing in the world of the enterprise cloud network and SD-WAN, SASE, to what we're doing in the actual APIs and processes. Because remember, these are the piece parts that make up the enterprise. Now, ultimately, that's the enterprise is our ultimate customer for everything we're doing, basically.
That is actually brilliant. You know, I'll put that in my plenary next time in Montreal, because it's brilliant. What you're saying is, let me recap to see if I got it right. What you're saying is most multinationals, a large enterprise, has a network integrator that takes care of their network. So it could be, I won't put names out there, but they normally outsource to say, hey, you manage my network for me, right? And that's been the traditional world because they don't have their own network staff. Some do, but most of them just outsource it, right? And what you're saying now is that same managed provider that doing the network management that was normally with products of all kinds is saying, oh, wait a minute, I have to have tools and everything to now be able to connect to all these providers who are
running in their own infrastructure and their own locations.
And so now all of a sudden they're using these APIs and these automation systems themselves to do that instead of manual people. They
will have to do that. This kind of enterprise cloud network has sort of snuck up on people, I think, in a way. You know, they started using some multi-cloud, and then somebody said, use the multi-cloud core as your backbone, and because you can't get access to some locations, or use an interconnect, you know, provider who can give you a transit across their fabric or something like that. And they just started adding things. I don't think they realized that actually I'm going to have a headache trying to manage all of this because I don't control that circuit.
Yeah.
I don't control that core, and it's not standardized. If I'm in their position as if they're an MSP or an integrator, I want to standardize how I deal with all these guys, because I need to be able to funnel it back up into some single pane of glass. And if I can't do that, I'm not going to be able to offer them a service. Basically, I'm not going to be able to say it's a managed service, because it's not a managed service. It's a stovepipe network, basically.
I love the use case, actually. I'm going to definitely put that up in the plenary next time, because I think it's brilliant. I think you're spot on, and I do remember the network integrators going and manage all the different vendors' products on behalf of multinationals. And now what they're struggling with is that's all outsourced, right, into the service providers, and now they have to get all of that knowledge to
get all that information and bring it back in,
to see how it's doing and operating it.
Operate them with the same reliability and quality. It's just like it's a mega opportunity, because we've got lots of flexibility in the network now, a lot of diversity in the options we have, but now we've got a bigger management headache, you know?
So as network as a service becomes more and more powerful, then the idea is an enterprise of multinationals doesn't rely on one retail provider to do the whole global thing. He says, no, I am relying on my network integrator, who then manages that on behalf of all of these NAS providers.
Or even what I'm saying is the retail provider themselves, because they're a B2B arm, they're not necessarily relying on their network. And we have some cases where actually they could just use last mile circuits in their local in-country national wholesale, but the rest of the network is being supported by suppliers in different countries, a multi-cloud core. It's completely not their network at all. They're offering a service that is built of other suppliers.
That one I always present. But I think the opportunity from the enterprise itself is pretty wild. And I think that's where I think there's a huge opportunity. Well, Michael, I know we're running late here on time, so thank you so much for this great enlightenment and all of the great work that Martis has done and continues to do in MEF. So very appreciative. And it's been a pleasure. Any last thoughts before we close out?
Oh, that's great. I'm glad I've had the opportunity to have a chat with you and share the insights that we have. You know, some exciting things going on in the market at the moment.
Absolutely. Well, with that, thank you so much.
Thanks.